former diplomat's daughter, which is exactly what it is. We ended up living in Hokkaido, Sapporo, Hokkaido as a child. I have some images of me. My grandmother's pictures are on here too. Let's see if I can go back. I did obonodori as a child in Japan. I'll show you pictures of those in a few moments. It's on my phone. Not on my phone. It's on my, I think it's on my Facebook page. So I'll just transfer that. But here are some images of me in Japan. Here's one. Back in the day, we didn't have computers. So this is an image of me with my tomodachi in Japan. That's me. I think this was somebody's birthday. Maybe my birthday. I don't remember. So I lived in Hokkaido, Sapporo, Hokkaido. I did obonodori, which is Japanese dancing for profession, not a professional. When you're young and you're going through the Japanese culture, it is very important to understand Japanese culture. So my mom said, oh, it's important to take Japanese dancing classes. So I did obonodori, which is where this fan is from, which is like a big deal. And just going back into the subject of Ryuichi Sakamoto, I think he's an incredible composer. There is nothing here that's, he's just an amazing composer. And the piece that people are now beginning to find, I had learned in 1986 when the movie first came out. I was actually in the movie theater when the movie first landed in the movie theaters in Japan. So for me, it was a big experience, going through that experience and learning how that was a thing. And the song is obviously Adventures, well, the movie is called Adventures of Chatoran. And it's basically based off of, like, it's an adventurous cat who has an exploration and travels with his best friend in the end, which is this pug named Pusuke. And it just basically goes into just nature and exploring. Some of it is good, some of it's very, very sad. The music is absolutely incredible. So growing up as a child, I learned to basically, here, my mom was an opera singer. Let me just go back into this. I'm slightly flustered because the past video was not able to upload, which is really frustrating. But I am going to show you some images of me in Japan. So along with these, this is obonodori, that is me. That is me when I'm a little girl. That's my picture, okay? I don't have the... And then this is my mom. She was an opera singer. Okay. So we learned in Japan music education at a young age. Okay, that's me doing obonodori on stage. So I did it not professionally, but I think I did okay for a little person to recognize the skills of learning Japanese formal dancing. That's what I did as a child. So going back into the essence of Japan, we grew up in Hokkaido, which is known for like all this snow. They have these beautiful snow festivals with these huge ice sculptures that they create during the snow festival season in Hokkaido. And I grew up as a Japanese person. I didn't grow up as a Westerner living in Japan. I grew up as somebody who went to a Japanese school, who went to Yochien and Ichinense and learning Nihongo on like a very, very extensive format, from reading to writing to language to communication. It was like a huge thing for me. So all the things that people might have learned about Japan when not many people who were of foreign backgrounds were living in Japan at the time, because I know I was one of the few, and another one of my friends who I also grew up with, she was also one of the few. I think her family still lives in Japan, Tokyo, I think. We experienced Japan as Japanese kids. We didn't experience it as Western kids, because we had to participate in the cultural essence of living in Japan. So all the things that people would have experienced in the 80s, for somebody who grew up in Japan, who was Japanese, is the stuff that I experienced and grew up with in Japan as well, because that's what it was for me. That was like the thing. Even the music. We did not have production equipment, or if there was, obviously people like Ryuichi Sakamoto would have been a big example of a producer that was in the music industry during the 80s, and then had explored different ways of creating music through production in that format. It was very, very interesting. And my experience with music was both through the dance, because we used very traditional Japanese music for Japanese obonodori, and obviously classically trained musician, because my mom was an opera singer, so we had classical that was kind of embedded in our music education, which was like a thing. But I learned it as, rather than C, D, E, F, G as the West, do, re, mi, fa, so, like solfege would have been the way we were trained in Japan. So I had to readjust myself depending on the country that we lived in for the particular music education. It was just different. It was different in different places. That's just how it was. And I've accepted the fact that there were different ways I had to go about learning things, right? So there's that. And then the music production that I had done was basically taught through the music production that the second time around when we lived in Japan, we lived in Tokyo. So the last year of my high school, I was in Tokyo. Before that, I was in high school in the States at Walt Whitman, and then last year in Japan, Tokyo, Japan, was ASIJ American School in Japan, which was like a private school, but like usually you would wear uniform in like a school. In this case, it was like I guess it was for like the Westerner approach, so we didn't have any uniform. We had public attire, like we would wear like normal clothing. We could dress it up, dress it down. That was like fine for us to do, because that was like what it was like to be in an international school. I was in school, my sister was in, what was her name? Hikaru. If anybody knows Hikaru, whoever lived in Japan, if you know Hikaru Utada, that was the musician we had. She was famous in Japan, hey? So we were in her school. We were there. And yeah, it's just what I'm doing now is I'm busy talking through the stuff that I wasn't able to talk about on my video, because the video didn't upload. I don't know what happened. It was kind of weird. It was really kind of frustrating. So I'm talking about my experience living in Japan, because I didn't live in the States. Like, I lived in the States for like short spurts of my time, but I did not grow up in a music education system. Here, I learned my jazz once I arrived back to the States, but it was all focused on Japanese elements, from when I danced obonodori to the music I listened to on anime, because the anime music was not necessarily the music that the people from the West would hear. It was generally the music that people from a Japanese background would have heard firsthand on like the anime and the cartoons and all those things, like Totoro's music. I'm pretty sure that some of the music that was created during that time frame was also based off of, my personal opinion is that Ryuichi Sakamoto actually led the way for the growth of a music during an era. And I only picked up on his music, like the actual composition was his, after I'd watched a couple of other movies. Like I'd watched The Last Emperor, and then what was it called? Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. And those two songs sounded so familiar that I was like, there's a reason why these sound familiar. And then I went back to the song that was of Ryuichi Sakamoto. The first one, I didn't know his name at the time. I just knew the song because it just reminded me of everything that I remembered eclectically as a child. So that was my experience learning the song. I played by ear. I played that song by ear, which was important. And then a lot of the stuff that I produce now is very much more Asian based because I feel as if, because I grew up there, I grew up in Japan, I feel as if I feel more, look, my husband's Asian too, so I suppose that's probably what it is that we are a family of Asian. My mom's also part Asian. Like she's part Asian. Like she's South African, but there's definitely Asian there. Definitely. Where's the picture? My mom is South African, but our background has, I think, Indian and Indonesian ancestral background. Let's see. So she has, we definitely have Asian in our background. That's my mom. Okay. This was when we lived in Japan, so she has a kimono on, right? So I have Asian ancestral background, so that's also part of the reason why I feel like there's like this whole lineage of going back to the eclectic feel of what you find in, not just in Japan, but like the sounds around you. Okay, so I'm gonna go into the track that I'm still working on it, and I'm not going to play his song, but what I am going to do is I'm going to play the piece I was working on. Where is it? Gosh. Open. I don't want to do this. That's not what I want. Open recent. Yeah, project. Let's first start with this one. This is one that I did before. Okay, let's start with this one so you could see the development of where I am. But I have been doing music production for a long time. I might not be recognized in the industry as people would expect a person to be. I don't necessarily believe that you need to send your tracks over to places like TuneCore or Deezer or CD Baby, because in the end, what they're doing is diluting your capabilities of earning money, and they're taking a huge percentage of what you're trying to even potentially make on your own track that you've produced, and then give you maybe pennies because now you're using their platform to place your music onto their like format, right? So I don't agree with that, and I guess you would call me a little bit underground, which is fine. I don't mind that situation. I know my sister used to call me that. She's like, "You're so underground." I was like, "That's good. That's a positive thing." I would rather be an underground person who understands the quality of music and to have the freedom of expressing myself musically than to be forced into dealing with the question on what the public desires a person to produce music for or as. So I do it differently. I feel as if you're going to produce music, it should be emotional. And during the 80s, there were no, like, I think Sony was just coming to the forefront because Japan, you know, Sony is Japanese, and so is Yamaha. And I have absolute respect for the development and growth in music production through Japan, because it really did start from the core structure of Japan. I think Japan was a very big, impactful experience through music, the music world, right? This is my older piece. But I'll just play it, and then I'm going to play you the second piece, just a little bit. Okay, and I also did live in South Africa. My mom is South African, but because my dad was a U.S. diplomat, which is exactly how it happened for me. I happened to be in a situation where my dad was a U.S. diplomat. And being in a diplomatic family, it's almost like a military family, but a little bit more closer to ambassadorship type of thing. And my dad's job was to work with like celebrity artists and just celebrities and the creatives doing and developing projects for those types of things. So I met people like Tom Cruise and Paul McCartney was at the university. He popped over to the university that I happened to study at in the United States. But all of these type of people, like all these celebrities were around before cameras. We didn't have the iPhone to film people. Oh, look, there's like a celebrity, like film them now. We didn't have that access. So you would see more celebrities like within areas than you would now. It's a different kind of feel. I mean, it's just different. I wish I met Ryuichi Sakamoto. That was like my biggest dream, was to one day meet Ryuichi Sakamoto, but it never happened. I was like, how am I going to meet this genius guy? But I never did. It was very unfortunate. But I did, however, when I lived in Tokyo, for the last bit of my high school, I apprenticed for a designer whose name is Jürgen Lell. Jürgen Lell, I believe, is still around. He is a German designer that moved from Germany to Japan. And what had then happened is, I think through my dad's office, I actually wanted to work for Vogue. I was like, I want to work for Vogue. Can somebody get me into Vogue? I want to be behind the scene. I love photography. I'd like to see how it works. So I got in. I got a chance to experience Vogue Tokyo, but because I wasn't Japanese, they didn't give me a position working there. So it was like really disheartening. But in the end, I ended up working or apprenticing for Jürgen Lell, who was a designer whose best friend happened to be Issey Miyake. So it's like full circle. Like I've been dealing with the music industry. I've been dealing with the fashion industry. It's like what it was. And then I was studying the arts for the purpose of understanding painting structure, drawings, designs, concepts, graphic design, all the things that you need for developing growth. I'm sort of glad that I did all those things, because now I'm able to do it without asking somebody to. I don't need to hire anybody to do it for me. I do it for myself, because this is the type of thing that I like studied, right? So I was trained formally in Japan. So the way I think is not like casual American artist creating music. It's like I have technical understanding of the formalities of living in Tokyo. I even spoke Nihongo for like years and years and years, like long time. Okay, so let me just play the next piece. Open recent. Is this it? Close. And this is the new track I'm busy working on. It is, I think there's a lot to be done. Somebody had mentioned to incorporate some violin, which I will. But the violin will come in when I think I need to take out some pieces here. It's too busy right now, right? Too busy. Yeah. But I still have the same feel. Yeah. So tomorrow I'll go back and rework those sections. So for me, it is a big deal. It is a big deal. The equipment that I have is not new, okay? I have collected this stuff in about like 10, I have 2 keyboards here. I actually have 3. And then a mic, a few mics, the desktop, obviously. I have a few laptops. And then the keyboards are relatively old. But the way to maintain a keyboard is to take care of it. And I think not enough people take care of their equipment so that the equipment lasts a long time. And I think that that is ingrained in me. Like, I've learned to take care and maintain technology through my studies in Japan. I do think that that had a really huge role in how I kind of deal with technology in a very different like way. I don't just toss something out because it doesn't work. I make sure that it stays working, but by keeping it maintained, you manage to keep the piece or the equipment tidy and clean. It does fall into, you know, just like these are old. These are from the 80s. I think they might even be older. I don't know. What does it say? I can't read. I wouldn't even be able to tell you what it says. But these are old. These I had when I was, this is the one, I think this is the one piece I actually have. My mom brought it back to show me. She's like, here, your fan. This is my Bonodori fan. So when I lived in Japan, I did Japanese dance, Obonodori. And with Obonodori, you wear a kimono, and then you have like the fan, and then you do like the little Japanese, like, and you dance to Japanese traditional music, right? So that's very, very traditional, very, very formal training. So I come from a formal trained background. My dad was a diplomat for the U.S. Embassy. He worked with people who were like celebrity stature type of characters. And I just happened to be intermingled in this whole mix of things because of his job and career. So my lifestyle now does not reflect diplomatic lifestyle. And I don't think I want it to be reflected of that. I just know that my formal training comes from that family background, from, for instance, having coffee in my parents' house in South Africa with Paul Simon, which was like absolute craziness. I was like, how is he possibly in? I didn't know who it was, so I wouldn't have known who I was sitting next to, but my dad played a role in the performance at, I think that was in the 80s as well. So once we left Japan, I think I was like 7. Left Japan, we moved to Pretoria, which is in South Africa, just out of Johannesburg. And then from there, he also had dealt with other people. So this is the first time I've left my parents' house. I didn't want to affiliate myself with the people that he knew, only because I didn't want to be like, oh, your dad's name is Brooke Spector, and this is what your dad does, and this is like his history. And I'm just like, I want people to see me for who I am, right? This is the first time I've had to, or I've experienced allowing people to see who I am for who I am, rather than my family background, which was a distraction because I think on many occasions people got one perspective and didn't see my side of things. And I feel like this is the first time I'm able to actually speak up and say something about it. It was great experience, but I also feel as if it came with a lot of responsibilities on how people perceive you. So I was a little rebellious. I had my moments, make no mistake. I had my moments. I did not always agree with what was going on. And so therefore I did my own thing, but always maintained, I always maintained my music. I knew that if I did not do my music, and I've been doing music for the past 40 something years, right? And I wasn't gaining it for success or fame. It would be nice, but I would like to do it, if I were to do it that way, it would be nice to do it on my own terms. I wouldn't want it to be coming from somebody like my sister did that. My sister ended up being in the music industry because my dad gave the go-ahead, and now she works with all these people. And I'm like, I didn't want to do that. That was not my goal was to be my own, produce myself, my own